Hello, I'm John Dunn, and welcome to the Elation Hour. As always, I am joined by my colleague, Matthias Hinrichs. Hi, Matthias.
Hey, John, and hello to all the panelists. Thanks for joining us.
Before I jump into the episode, just wanted to do a little housekeeping. We're really glad that you guys have joined us after several months of hiatus. We did eight episodes, and we took some time off, and now we're kind of back. And really excited to be doing these Elation Hours with you guys. We'll be changing it to once a quarter, so you can look forward to joining myself and Matthias and our guests as we go through into 2021. Did want to touch on a couple of things before we jump in again. Obviously, we're dealing with some unprecedented times in our industry, and our industry has really rallied around together with this Red Alert Restart program. I just want to make sure that we've all are supporting that and reaching out to our elected officials to kind of push through the support that our industry needs. I don't think that there's anybody in the entertainment field that hasn't been impacted. One thing I do need to touch on is the Elation family in particular has had a tragic loss in the last couple of days. And we lost a good friend and colleague in Joe Adams. For you guys who have known Joe, he was just an amazing person, really an infectious laugh, and one of the most dedicated, hardworking individuals I've ever met. And I think for everybody who really knew him, he cared about everybody. And just like the rest of us, we need to pick ourselves up and work together. And Joe would want us to kind of push through and continue on. And with that, we want to move forward with the Elation Hour and bring some really fantastic, talented guests to the table. Hello, panelists. Today we have Casey Wilkerson from Disney on the West Coast side. We have Norm Schwab from LightSwitch, and we have Ryan Stumpp from the East Coast side of Disney. Hi, Casey.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Hi, Norm.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi, Ryan.
Good afternoon, actually.
So as we always start with these episodes, I want to give you guys a little background on these distinguished panelists, and they can kind of tell their story a little bit. And you guys can see the trajectory that they may have taken to get to where they are. Today's episode is about themed environments. So Casey, why don't you kick us off? Get a little background about yourself.
Sure. My name is Casey Wilkerson. I'm the principal lighting designer for Disney Parks Live Entertainment in Anaheim. And I lead a team that designs and implements and programs entertainment lighting and visual effects, including fountains, mist screens, fire, lasers, atmospherics for our shows here in California and in Hawaii. And we also do provide some support for our international parks as needed, especially on the programming side. I'm also responsible for the creative oversight for the Disneyland fireworks program, providing essentially creative guidance and direction for the 7 shows that we have in our repertoire. I started out in high school as a theater nerd, and after briefly flirting with set design, I actually went and saw the Police on the Synchronicity Tour in 1983, and they were using moving lights. They were one of the first bands after Genesis to jump onto moving lights. And after that night, I just no longer wanted to be a set designer. I was massively in love with lighting, so I went to college, studied theater and lighting design before moving to California, where I landed at Disneyland as a technician. And with Disneyland, I worked my way from being a tech to a 10-year stint as a technical director to senior lighting designer, and then now to principal. And I continue to design plays and musicals here in Southern California because I'm still a theater nerd when it really comes down to it.
Some things never change, right?
Right, truly.
And they shouldn't.
Exactly.
Thank you, Casey. Norm, how about a little background on yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and attended Carnegie Mellon University for theater, actually. And right before I got in, I was starting to do lighting for local bands. And the local band that we were working on got a stint opening up for Van Halen. So I got to go on one of the Van Halen tours right around 1978 and kind of fell in love with that and kind of went back to Carnegie and said, can I take a year off and do this for a year? And luckily they let me right back in. And my final year at Carnegie, I got an opportunity to do an internship, and I think I had a choice between C Factor, Show Lights, and FM Productions. Crazily enough, chose FM Productions and went to San Francisco for my senior year, second semester, and fell in love with the Bay Area and got into FM Productions, which was Bill Graham's concert production company. Right at the time, they were moving out of concerts and into a variety of things. The first year I was there, we were doing like the David Bowie tour, which was a concert, but also the launch of the Macintosh, the LA Olympics, and the Democratic Convention, and kind of my eyes opened up to the world around us. And eventually, to fast forward, I met John Featherstone, who was doing lighting for the Smiths at the time, and we kind of were saying, how do lighting designers take too many jobs when they come in and figure out how to do it? And we said, we don't know. Why don't we form a group of lighting designers that can then, almost be like a studio or consortium? And we formed Light Switch with the idea of kind of having a bunch of individual lighting designers. None of us had business training or anything, and let's form this organization. And slowly, we're now been together 27 years, and I think have jumped from everything from entertainment to architainment. I know it's a horrible word, theme parks, and really kind of worked a diverse thread from the entertainment, both temporary to the built environment, and really how all of that is threaded through. So,
well, you kind of touch on it. It's that architainment, it's themed environments, kind of like a unique topic. So we're going to hopefully define that a little better here. And John Featherstone and Iggy Rosenberg from your consortium over there were kind enough to join us on a previous episode. So we're happy to have you here.
Cool, thanks.
Ryan, a little background on yourself. You might be a little different than Norm's and Casey's.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit different. I'm a lighting designer also for Disney Parks Live Entertainment on the East Coast. Casey very eloquently kind of described what we do, and the tasks are pretty much the same on the East Coast. We supervise and bring kind of the magic to life in certain ways, and for all of our guests. And some of the things that we do can range from spectaculars to parades to character meet and greets to stage shows to, as Casey said, fountain shows and all sorts of other things. So I actually got a lot of my initial inspiration from Disneyland. I'm a product of California originally. I'm from Torrance. And, so I grew up at Disneyland, not Disney World. And I was there opening month of Fantasmic in the early 90s. And that's really kind of where, as a kid, I was like, wow, this is crazy. We have an ultra themed environment. And then all of a sudden this ultra themed environment, which is a theme park, turns into this stage show right in front of you. It was very fascinating. I'd say I probably jumped out of, the mindset of this technical theater fascination for a while, and actually went to school to start being a pilot. And, so started doing some pilot training, opened up a DJ company in high school in which I did the DJ thing, and actually DJ'd my senior dances and proms and that sort of thing. And got really, really interested in this once again. Went through the Whole Hog 2 training with the very late Steve Irwin from the Light Training Network at that time. And that's probably, that training is probably what kicked me into this crazy, like, oh, I want to do this. This is crazy. Applied for a Disney internship as an entertainment technician. And I was here in Orlando, Florida, doing intern style work, shadowing and learning and soaking up as much as I could. They happened to be in a hiring moment after the internship, and they offered the opportunity to jump in. So I decided to join the Disney team as an entertainment technician. Through the years, moved up through some crew chief and master electrician and programmer types of roles. And then finally jumped into the design department to help out with Disney Cruise Line temporary assignments, where we were reimagining spaces for dry docks on our Disney ships. And then every project, I slowly started molding into kind of a full-time role. and I've been full-time here at Disney Parks Live Entertainment for several years. Thoroughly enjoying the gig, and it's taken me around the world on cruise ships and international Disney parks, and things that I never dreamed that I would have lit otherwise.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you all. So kind of, I think all of you touched on it. Casey, given that list of things that you oversee, and Ryan kind of reaffirming that, and then Norm, of course, bringing in all these other, genres that you're touching on. Themed environments, I mean, that kind of touches on so many things, from theme parks where some of you work directly, to cruise ships, to interactive spaces in malls, fountains, those sort of lake shows. So why don't you guys give us a little concept of what you see the themed environment genre is? And Norm, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, I think you touched on some of the obvious. I mean, everyone knows theme parks, very large, the larger name brand IP, or maybe even the one you grew up with as a kid. I grew up with Kennywood Park in Pittsburgh, and there's some of the names, Sandusky, Ohio, and some of these great, Williamsburg, bring to life all these amazing memories, both from childhood, and I think people grab onto those as they grow up and bring their families to them. But to us also, I think we've learned that themed environments include. I think one of the first ones we realized was Fremont Street in Las Vegas, where the idea was, let's turn an entire neighborhood. It's not really an urban neighborhood, but I think they wanted to create a community and a neighborhood built around lighting, entertainment, and media. It was one of the first of its kind. We all remember themed restaurants. Maybe we don't all remember them, but how that tried to bring itself into the eating environment. And I think most of them were, now seem ridiculously dated. But I think the idea of, really bringing entertainment into, the eating world, I think hasn't gone away. You see, I think now, really we're discovering that this, it's almost morphing into this world experiential, but I think it is really themed environments. People want this environment, where they work, where they live, where they play, and it doesn't have to be over the top, but I think it has to be something, people are brought into everything from media. They're into, they want to control the lighting. They want to understand their environment and be entertained by it. And we're seeing it, in everything I call them vertical theme parks. This Area 15 in, Las Vegas, I think is such a very big part of, this world where, it's a lot of different brands brought together in one really big themed environment. And we're seeing it in parks and, neighborhoods, where people really want us to bring both art, technology, entertainment just in their everyday life.
Absolutely. Ryan, I think, besides the Disney side, I know that you've done some other side projects and that include shows and lasers and making a shopping place kind of an interactive space, right? So why don't you talk on that a little for us?
Yeah, I think that Norm said it earlier, but it was the architainment world, that some people like it, some people don't like that word, but it really is taking what I define, in architainment is we all know what architectural lighting is, but, architainment is adding some sort of entertainment flair to it. I do some freelance installations on the side, and, we've got a great one in Alabama that, we've taken a normal outdoor nighttime shopping dining district, and really listening through creative concepts that the owners really wanted to entertain their guests a little bit more than just the complex. We've taken it and figured out a way to light it differently, light it so that it's interesting, light it so it's not like the complex next door, added some entertainment show elements to it that make people stop and ooh and ah and say, oh, this is great, or have a moment with their children. That's for me, themed entertainment is pretty much, themed entertainment lighting is pretty much generically lighting that enhances, immerses, or entertains a common area where an audience is.
I like that. It's a good definition. Casey, how about for you?
Well, for me, I think it's about it's about curating a space. So whether it's something like what Ryan just mentioned, sort of a downtown shopping or dining district, or if it's something like somebody that Team Lab does, where you go into a warehouse space and create something intentional. It's really about taking whatever that space is and going, and leveling way up, depending on the size of your budget, obviously. And I think what it speaks to in guests, no matter what they're attending, is just the desire for something that is different and something that's a little bit more, and something that that hopefully they can connect with, that resonates with them, that allows them to create a great memory of that experience and hopefully go back and experience it again. And I think that's obviously possible whether it's in the confines of a theme park or out in the world, as we've seen with all of these installations, even going back to Norm's point to Fremont Street, to something like what Meow Wolf's doing in Santa Fe, and all of these other companies are beginning to do that are more experiential and immersive than just standing there looking at something.
Well, that's, I think, the key word is experiential and immersive, right? And as I think, kind of using the Vegas example, I think Vegas in the casino world has done a fantastic job of creating themed environments. I mean, I can remember way back into the 70s, if you guys remember the James Bond movies and Circus, when that was new, and the acts in the ceiling, that whole kind of experiential themed environment to keep you seated and engaged in your gambling, right? So kind of you guys all touched on a lot of different pieces. So architainment, performance in a lot of cases, telling a story. So as you kind of go through this, what are some of the techniques you guys are using to really cover these theatrical, performance, live pieces, whether that's streaming or camera feeds, and also the architectural elements? Casey, how are you kind of approaching that diverse elements in there and approaching that in some meaningful way? I mean,
well, it's gotten a little weird, right? I mean, especially these days when so much is moving online to streaming and everything. But I think regardless of what you're working on, like for me, it always starts with the overall, whether you want to call it story, narrative, design concept, whatever. And I think once I have a handle on that, I can begin to select the right mix of technologies and techniques that I'm going to use for that particular project. I think most of the projects that I work on have a mix of needs, right? And there may be a broadcast element, there may be a touch element to it, right? So you're looking at a variety of different technologies and how all of those technologies interact and affect each other. And of course, no one manufacturer makes everything you need for any given project. So I do. I always tend to start with a fair amount of shootouts and demos. I mean, John, you and Matthias have spent more than a couple of nights lugging fixtures around Disneyland so we can get a sense of what they do. I mean, you can always get a good general sense in a showroom of what a fixture can do, but if I need to see it light up a bank of trees 400 feet away, and what color looks like and how the texture reads, and if I throw in the animation wheel, is that going to completely diminish the output? And what does it look like if I'm trying to cover architectural elements that also have foliage, that also have signage or internal lighting or windows that are lit that I can't control? There's so many different factors when you get into that entertainment or sort of hybrid space, especially in our parks, because as much as we'd love to have control over absolutely everything, there are certain things that we may not be able to get control of, either for safety or guest satisfaction reasons. And we have to come up with workaround techniques for those and either make them appear to exist in what we're doing intentionally, or try to diminish them and ignore them in some way. But it all really comes down to what is it we're trying to do? What story is it we're trying to tell? If it's something straightforward as lighting up the castle with a front and side light, obviously I'm going to go for a robust architectural fixture with a long lifespan. I may not go for an entertainment fixture that is a lot less expensive that I'm probably going to have to replace in a couple of years, given the elements. So I guess what I'm saying is the tools and the techniques techniques really, really change depending on the project. There are a couple of touchstones that you can kind of keep going back to, but it really comes down to what story are we telling, and how do we effectively bring that to life.
For sure. And we'll kind of touch on the tools part a little bit more as we get further down the line here, because as you say, I think the nice part is, like you said, it starts with the story and how that feeds, and if there's other pieces in there, you start to layer within. Norm, how about for you? How do you balance, and how do you take a process in place to kind of balance all these things out?
I think it's, Casey hit on a lot of great things. I think story being, and what we're trying to do and tell, starting with that and working its way down to the solutions. But I think I can touch on two areas. One, when video has become such a large part of what we do. And I think at first, we learned how to create good video lighting, maybe, from just making sure it read on camera. And then we realized as cameras got better, we could start to play with it from an art part and maybe even deal with the fact that there was too much resolution. And, LED screens too, to balance, were too bright, where we used to be, having to battle against projection. Now it's like, turn that screen down, I can't see my lighting, or we've had to, turn up the lighting 10 times. I think now the interesting thing is that, this kind of movement toward personal video systems, and the fact that everybody is their own video producer and creator. And, I think I learned a lot of it when we were doing restaurants in Las Vegas, and the owner said, I'm in the waiting area, or the queue area, or the lobby, and I want to make sure that the guest can take the perfect selfie without additional light. So we had to create almost a TV studio, at least in balance, in their restaurant. Just that, and that all of a sudden it turned my thinking, to, oh my God, our world has changed so dramatically. And I think some of the pop-up stores we've been doing a ton of these really interesting pop-up stores, especially in Asia, where they seem to be a little less worried about intrusive technology, and there's everything from facial recognition that then follows you around the store, to scanning your pores, to then it teaching you and having the lighting react to you as an individual based upon, it knows it's you. It then tries to figure out from the scan that it took on your face what product to offer you, and then the lighting and the video must react to that in real time. Even though sometimes really all they're trying to do is, tell you want the most expensive product. We chose this really expensive one for you. But we're starting to play with some of those techniques, and it was so eye-opening about the input and output and how it changed in real time. And again, maybe those aren't ready for the US, facial recognition, and, but it definitely opened. We had eye tracking, where as you looked at the product, it then lit up because it could tell that you were looking at that product, things like that. So
that's actually a pretty amazing perspective. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Minority Report, but that's very Minority Report as you're walking through, and targeted messaging and all that stuff. And I think to kind of touch on what you said with video to start with, and how it's really become a key element. I can remember a project here in Los Angeles, say one of the theme parks where Harry Potter lives, and they built this outdoor space, and then they had the lighting taking cues. I think what Control Freak built it, where it was taking cues from the video content. So the lighting was really drawing from whatever the content was. So that was really driving the whole space, interestingly enough. Ryan, how about for you? How do you balance all these things as you're,
as the other two, as the other two people said, it definitely starts with a story, but we're seeing more and more of the blend of technology that comes in to see how we can tell, our stories with emerging technologies. But, I think it also has to do with who is your audience when we're talking about these techniques. And, lately it's not all been for camera, but with everybody having a personal cell phone and a video camera in their pocket, these are, in addition to sharing these experiences in person with people want to take these experiences home. So almost one of the best tools that's in my pocket is my cell phone, because that's exactly how a guest of that's watching a production that I've done is gonna take home and remember that. So, but technique-wise, so I do use that a lot. But technique-wise, I mean, it just depends on what we're doing, and obviously with themed entertainment, it can vary greatly depending on an architainment installation or, as you said, a theatrical stage show is still part of entertainment, especially in the middle of a theme park. Meet and greet locations, where we're lighting, world-class, characters for, with people. And then we're adding in an additional, experiential element of, lighting and special effects around them. And then, of course, we're trying to capture that, on a phone or something like that as well. Nighttime spectaculars are a whole different ball game, which fall under themed, where we're taking a lot of different things. You look at one of our Halloween fireworks shows where we've got performer-based theatrical elements, and then you add on architainment elements, and we're lighting horticulture and buildings, and we're doing searchlights and beams. Adding on, parade route lighting around you that, kind of immerses you into it. And then, of course, you add it on because we want to capture it, pull out your cell phone and see how it looks on video. We want to make sure that can be taken home, but it's definitely an organizational thing. It starts with a story and you kind of just build off of that.
It's kind of interesting. Matthias, I don't know if you remember this, but when we did the concert one, a lot of those people said, put your phone away, experience it in real life. And where you guys...
The cell phone thing came up there too, where they said they'd start to check how it looks on cell phone, because there's so many of these social media moments and the YouTube generation in a way, and the Instagrammers, like that's how they, how artists share and how they interact with people. So you have to...
I'll be honest, when I do use the cell phone, it's not always sitting there for 5 minutes trying to get, the perfect angle of perfect picture. A lot of these experiences come and go so fast to where, I kind of just try to do it in real time, as if somebody was trying to capture it in the moment.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things about the cell phone thing. I did a LDI panel a few years back, and we were asked what light meters we used, and there were, I think, 5 of us on the panel, and the first 4 all had these beautiful, awesome, amazing light meters. And I pulled up my phone and I was like, my guests don't have light meters, my guests have phones, and that's how they're experiencing this content. It's not that we don't use light meters when we're doing stuff specifically for camera, but I found that our work has changed so much just in the last 5 years based on that. Because, one of the great things is, your triumphs are out there on YouTube for all the world to see, but so are all of your failures. And so the ability to look at that prior and go, okay, what does this look like? I look at so many of the shows that I've done that end up on YouTube, and I'm like, oh my God, if they had just pressed focus, if they had just, on their camera to make the show look better, or the colors off, or the balance is off between like the pyro and the lighting in the video, and you lose control over that. So you do the best that you can with the tool that's in front of you to try to make sure that hopefully somebody posts a good looking video of it.
Yeah, I remember the first press launch I did where we put up a big sign on the press riser. Today's color temperature is, just to help everybody as we started to shift to daylight lighting.
I wonder if we get that on a sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hopefully if we get to the place that you saw in Asia, they'll just push that in notification to the people as they're screening, like, hey, you need to set to this, that, or the other thing. So kind of, Casey, you touched on this, and Ryan, you too, not so much yet, Norm, for yourself, but foliage, different canvases, like what you're lighting, whether that's in some cases animals, a marquee architectural piece, i.e. castles. How do you guys navigate some of these, unique canvas applications, whether it's water or whether it's a living thing, human or other, or a major architectural iconic situation? Norm, why don't you start us off?
I think everything from, understanding what you're lighting, first of all, and that comes from, depending upon, it's one of those things where one of the best things to light is something that's already built that you have a chance to go maybe try things on. And those are, you can do mock-ups, you can see what it is. very often I think that the difference is when you're building something that hasn't been built yet, or lighting something that hasn't been built yet, and you're trying to make educated guesses, even if you know what the material is and you know what the circumstances are, that it still comes down to, and I think all of us know this, we are in a, I think we all got into this business because it's both art and science. But, there's a lot of art there and a lot of, you don't really get to see it till it comes together. So you're very often, no matter how much of an educated guess you make, you still want some degree of flexibility at the end. And you don't always get that in the world of architecture. You have to make these decisions. But you still wish, that you still could have some degree of flexibility. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned. But again, one of the coolest things is lighting. You get to go light something that you can go see it, while you're planning the lighting. I mean, as far as, animals, I think one of my favorite stories is we were lighting a penguin environment, and we were starting to talk with the people that the animal specialists that were dealing with this, in this case, bird. They were telling us that the penguins were having trouble molting as a result. They were not, having as many children, laying as many eggs. And they had an idea of what it was. And first of all, we asked them do you have specifications, to tell us how to light it? And in the end, they said, no, they didn't. They just knew they had a problem. So we worked with them and eventually realized that there wasn't enough ultraviolet light in the atmosphere, or at least in the lighting environment they had. And so we worked, and I learned all about how to measure UV and how to input it in a way that felt natural. And then along with the idea that the penguins, these were Arctic penguins, so for 6 months of the year, they needed to be in only red light, because that was, they're basically in the Antarctic, they have 6 months of dark, and red is the only light that they couldn't necessarily see. So we had to light them in red light. But in the end, we introduced a separate ultraviolet source, and they started, it was successful in terms of allowing them to molt. I always tell people, they came to us and said, oh yeah, they're having, amazing amounts of, laying amazing amount of eggs. And everyone says, how did you do it? And I always look at them and say, you want to know how we did it? We put a mirror ball in the back in their cave. And they started dating. No, but it was just an amazing learning experience of how to both navigate through what we thought was a scientific world, and then helping them achieve it through understanding, lighting. But it was the discovery process. We learned a lot, they learned a lot, and it was successful. So.
Yeah, that's unique. As we add this entertainment value, and like you said, I think I was working with one of your colleagues on a Chicago aquarium project. Mm-hmm. They were lighting like a whale or dolphin enclosure. And there's a lot of, different things that need to come into play, whether it's UV or specific colors that impact the animals differently. It's a pretty unique process. Mm-hmm. Ryan, how about you? How do you deal with unique canvases?
Yeah, I would say probably for the better part of over 10 years now, I've had some part in lighting one of our primary icons. It might look like a castle, here in Florida. And, watching the evolution of that, what's fascinating to me sometimes is watching the evolution of lighting that canvas over the years. Starting in the late 90s, we started introducing and going away from conventional based, instruments and moving over to color changing and automated types of instruments, and watching it go to, rotating through colors on a castle. And, when the first time we saw buildings change color, that was such an amazing thing. We made everything change color. It was like, we can do it. Let's do this. And, but seeing that, go through and then return to, artistic and, the biggest transition that we've seen is kind of sharing this with, video and media driven content on some of these architainment projects where, lighting is turned off, but at the same time, we've taken that icon and we moved the lighting outward to create a wider visual picture. supporting the media content instead of being, the primary. So, we're definitely consistently trying to partner with other disciplines to make sure that it's blended and layered, really nicely. I think actually one of the more interesting canvases that I've had was we were brought in to do the Disney store in Shanghai. Now that was to be opened prior to Shanghai Disney, and what that was, also intended to do was kind of, introduce, the city to Disney before, the park opened. So we were tasked, with making a statement and a very highly themed entertainment statement, in the middle of downtown Shanghai. Which was very difficult because there's a lot of other lights, there's a lot of other flashing lights, there's a lot of ambient light, and here we are at the base of the Oriental Pearl Tower, coming up with a highly themed environment, and that was pretty fascinating. A city is never closed. There is no production time, and we're trying to make Disney magic for an entire city. So there was a lot of previs, applications, put in that so that, we could make sure that, things were not revealed too early. But, we also tried, with all the ambient light, projected media content was not necessarily a possibility at that time. We were able to do some LED video pixels, that kind of created some, brought it to life through its marquee lights and completely turned it into kind of a really cool architainment installation that was adorned. Also worked with a company in LA that also outfitted even the roof of the store with thousands of pieces of LED pixie dust, so that as you're on the Pearl Tower, on the observation deck, you could look down and see the pixie dust emanating from the Mickey logo all the way down the side of the building, and the animations of the pixie dust, and ending up in this huge 60-foot clock tower that was completely themed and came to life. So that was probably one of the most interesting canvases, with challenges and that I probably dealt with.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Like light pollution in your kind of, as Casey touched on earlier, controlling your environment. You can't always control it, right? Yep. So, Casey, how about your thoughts on unique or diverse canvases?
Well, I think I have two. Number one, building on what Ryan had mentioned about video. In our fireworks shows here at Disneyland, we project content onto the castle, but we also project the same content onto the facade of the It's a Small World attraction, onto the buildings on Main Street, and onto the mist screens over in the Rivers of America Phantasmic viewing area. So you have these wildly different surfaces. Small World is white, so it's really friendly to video content. Main Street, not so much. There's brick, there's stone, there's fabric, there's wood, there's paints of all different colors and sheens. And then there's water and then there's the castle, obviously. And all four of those surfaces take not only lighting color, but media color very differently. And they take media resolution very differently. Sometimes you find that that a lower resolution can work on one surface, but that on another surface you need a much higher resolution. And that's been one of the things that's sometimes hard to get our producers to grasp how that affects the timeline. That you're not doing color correction for one surface, you're doing color correction for 4 different types of surfaces, and you're doing media correction, and you're looking for different things. If you've got a little bit of dithering or whatever on a mist screen, that may not show, but on Small World, you're definitely going to see it. And I think the other thing is, since we talked a little bit about mist screens, there's mist screens and fountains, and whenever you use fountains, especially when you're talking that number in the hundreds, the production timeline just grows, because much like moving lights, there are different types. There are straight laminar jets, others that have nozzles that allow for fans or other shapes, and when each fountain has directional control and an incorporated LED ring, that's a fair amount of parameters. multiplied by hundreds. And then you have to choose whether you're going to program the LED rings or feed them video, and that decision could be different depending on which scene you are in the show. And water doesn't behave like light, obviously. I mean, there's, especially when it's moving, you've got the overspray. So you're lighting the fountain, but then you're also lighting overspray, or you're choosing to put media on overspray and make it another part of the creative palette. And then the wind starts and all of your work just collapses, and it complicates the process. But it also sometimes compromises the design. In operating. If you get a windy night, the show inherently is going to look different. But it's really all of it's the integration of all of those elements. Back to the timeline that really affects what we're doing, and using all of these different types of technologies on different types of surfaces. It becomes kind of a monster that you have to manage.
Well, that's unique. So that's kind of touching on that. Technology is really, a massively integrated piece of what you guys have to do. And knowing all of you and some of the projects you've worked on, I'm going to combine two of these questions that we were talking about here. One is, it's all technologically based in how you're leveraging, but you guys are obviously designing around technology that might not exist yet for some of your projects. And you're really helping to create this concept of what technology can light the fountain versus the overspray and leveraging those sorts of things. So Ryan, why don't you kind of discuss with us a little bit about the technology that you've really leveraged a lot? Like, what are your backbone products? And then what are some of the things that you're kind of working on or that you have worked on to kind of bring the technology where you needed it to be for the creative process?
I think for a lot of my projects, which, the last couple of years have kind of remained probably in the nighttime spectacular realm a bit. Automated lighting in general, as a whole, is really the underlying technology that has allowed us to really be a lot more versatile from production to production, especially with not repertory theater, but repertory castles and, nighttime spectacular venues and areas that were, using them for parades, plus stage shows, plus castles, plus photo opportunities, plus broadcast canvases, and so, at a high level too, LED technology, it's not something that's discussed a lot, but LED technology, I think, is one of the highest groups of people that have benefited from LED technology is, the themed entertainment or theme parks or architainment, only because the duty cycles are so much higher than some of the others. Typically, in a lot of architainment and themed environments, the duty cycles are not unusual to be 365 days a year, multiple hours a day. To do that, to do some of the levels of things that we do now with conventional lighting or lamp-based technologies, it's very difficult to do so. Not just from a cost savings standpoint, but just time and quality of show quality basis. But living in the outdoor world, doing multiple full theatrical stage shows on a stage that's not designed to do that necessarily, and it's outside. Outdoor fixtures, I think I live very much in the outdoor fixture realm, and outdoor fixtures are like a huge part of my workflow these days, especially outdoors. I know I'm pretty sure you'll ask about outdoor fixtures some other time, but outdoor fixtures.
That a little bit, yes.
Sure, outdoor fixtures is the one of the biggest amounts of technology. Something that's also not talked about a lot is networking. Networking across multiple show systems and even within wide areas. So networking and what I call show file architecture to allow us to pull in multiple venues into into one, or separate them back out and to do, multiple other systems, where a system could handle an entire parade plus a spectacular plus a stage show. And you know what, it probably could do that all at the same time. So, those are some of the technology that I leverage to be able to do the job efficiently and consistently on a daily basis.
Great. Casey, I think you touched on that control thing too with parameters, right? It's a lot of parameters across a wide space.
Yeah, it is, and a lot of our shows, we're not talking about a 40-foot by 80-foot stage. We're talking about shows that stretch across acres. So you're looking at an entirely networked system. And the strength of that network is extremely important because what we have found is that once you build a show on the network, everybody loves the network, so they start wanting to put everything else onto the network. So luckily, we have a show control group that manages all of that, and that's awesome. But it is one of the things. It's like I'm glad Ryan brought up infrastructure, because it's one of those things that's not really sexy. It's not a cool new moving light or an LED or whatever. It's not something that you get, a production team or a creative director excited about, but it's something that you can't do the show without, right? So you have to make the necessary investments in that type of infrastructure to allow your show to actually function. And to Ryan's point, I think a good early example of leveraging a technology that was when we put 96 of the Platinum SBX beams up on top of the rooftops of Main Street in the castle at Disneyland. That was in 2015, right? And everyone in concert and festivals had done beams at that point. I mean, the Sharpie came out in 2006, 2007. So beams are sort of like yawn tired at that point. But our challenge is that we wanted to use them as a storytelling tool on a massive scale every night, outdoors, for a minimum of 5 to 7 years. And nothing existed at that time to allow us to do that. And that was 2015. That was 5 years ago. And now there's no shortage of fixtures that are outdoor rated, that are high quality, that we can stick out in the rain or the snow or the whatever and just let them go. Inversely, a good recent example was when we did the grand opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge here in Anaheim, and I used the Astera Titan tubes and the pucks. And the reason that we chose them was because there was a lot of conversation about where things needed to be placed, and they were rechargeable, and they were wireless DMX. So people that wanted to change their minds a lot could be allowed to change their minds, and we could move everything to wherever we needed it to be. And so that's another good example of having a tool that wasn't necessarily available even a few years ago, that allows you to do something creative and be flexible with it, which is also really important. I think another key part of that particular gig was we wanted this roiling energy effect behind the Millennium Falcon as it powered up. And we had no physical room for a projection. We couldn't get the effect that we wanted with lighting. So we turned to lasers through optical glass. And that was what delivered that effect. So it's looking beyond the normal way of how a tool might be used and fiddling it around with it a little bit out in the space to see what you can create.
Pretty amazing. I like leveraging all these different technologies and experimenting really to find what you need. Thankfully, you're at a place that has those sorts of capabilities, right?
True.
Norm, how about you? What is some technology that you're really, is there something that you base? This is my baseline product that I kind of base a lot of things on?
I think one of our biggest challenges these days, with my dog barking in the background, is integration of fixtures both into an architectural environment. We have a lot of architects that really pay close attention to not seeing fixtures. How do we integrate them? How is something, and this can be, everything from a low ceiling to a high ceiling. and starting to come up with, very complex theatrical effects with fixtures that need to be hidden or not you can't look into the fixture, has really kind of led us to a lot of interesting study and working with manufacturers, from everything from glare control to having a fixture that is, you start with one engine or one body, and then that can be a spot, a flood, a wall wash, having parts that can add to it. I think that's the thing we're really moving into. Also, I think as we're outfitting venues, we do a lot of, venues where you have to start where the current need is, but try to, as Casey was saying, how do we look ahead 5 to 7 years? And I think that's also one of the interesting things. I know this is maybe another topic of technology we're missing, but I think we're trying to figure out, this LED lamp may last 50,000 hours or 100,000 hours, but at what point is the mode or the idea that what you're looking at is no longer valid from an art standpoint? We find that the product may last 5 to 10 years, but it really may have a lifespan of 2 to 3 because somebody already wants something different or new. And so I think we're running up against that a lot. And I think also as manufacturers, we're starting to see new products come out. It used to be the LDI cycle. And now what is this new product cycle of coming out with something that then makes you feel that what you just bought, it's the iPhone theory, the feeling that what you just bought is completely obsolete. So we're trying to balance, how do we sell somebody something that's been sometimes 7 figures and make sure they still feel good about it in beyond 2 to 3 years. It's a really interesting conundrum.
Matthias, maybe you can.
Yeah, it's actually interesting, the theming you touched on there. Actually, Ryan and KC, I think in your environments, there's a lot of theming of the actual instruments where you try to hide it within grass, within structure. So it's actually not obvious that it is a lighting instrument. It may be hidden through the day and only be active at night. Maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
I mean, it's kind of interesting what Norm mentioned about, architects, having requests about, we want this, but we don't want to see this. That's, I think, an increasingly high requirement of highly themed environments, even especially on cruise ships as well. We want all of this, but we want to see very little of it. I will say that was probably, John, this might take you into your IP65 question, but I think that's actually what took me off the diving board, nose first into outdoor moving lights was, when we were trying to come up with a new canvas, utilizing something about what Casey was saying about using beam fixtures in the sky as a canvas and a storytelling tool. The producers and architects and art directors, everybody was very, very on board with that. The number one thing that was requested, though, was we don't want to see those acrylic bubble things. And it was like, wait, what? So we took a nosedive into outdoor fixtures, and that was probably the first time that I used it. And it wasn't actually for the outdoor factor of it, because again, for years now, we've been able to put them in enclosures, indoor fixtures in enclosures, and everything's fine. But that one wasn't going to be it. There was a second requirement of that fixture, is that it needed to be themed and painted so that it blended in as much as possible to the surrounding foliage, during the daytime. So that's what kind of jumped us off. There's no secret in Florida that some of our weather is the most extreme, and we don't get snow, so I can't speak to that. But I will say to anybody that has been to Florida on vacation at 3:00 in the afternoon during the summer, and you ask, where did this hurricane come from? I didn't know that there was a hurricane coming. It's a real thing. And the weather can actually change plus or minus 30 degrees, during those storm periods. Lots of high humidity, lots of temperature. Outdoor fixtures have been an absolute dream to utilize consistently to help our storytelling. So
I think that leads us nicely. Thank you, Ryan. And Casey, we'll kind of kick you off on this. You touched on the SBX on the rooftops, and
Right.
we know that those had to be in domes then.
Yes, they did.
How has this advent, and everybody mentioned, Elation has a robust IP65 armor, but so many manufacturers are making very good products across static and now moving lights that don't require any of these things. So how has this IP65 static fixture and now moving lights really improved your capabilities? Would you have put positions in a different place? Using the example of your rooftops, could you have put them in different places without the domes?
I might well have. And depending on, this part of this comes down to a cost analysis too, right? So you've got the fixture and the dome, or you've got a fixture, and the fixture might be incrementally more, but is it more than the fixture and the dome together? So if I'm just buying a fixture, I might be able to get more of them. And more isn't necessarily always better, but when it comes to memes, it kind of is, right? So, so if I could have gotten, 20 or 30 more fixtures without having to do domes, then I would have jumped at that in a heartbeat. The initial brief was the creative director saying to me, "What do you think 50 beams would look like on the castle on Main Street?" I was like, half as good as 100. So, so I would have loved to have had more. Those fixtures are something that I think a lot of designers have been asking for years. And obviously the manufacturers, this is sort of a niche of a niche, right? So there's a financial aspect to working that up, but then there's also the technology aspect of working out how do you make a moving light, that runs outdoors reliably. And it seems like a lot of people have we're well into the cracking that code and making good, solid, reliable fixtures that can be used outdoors. And it's not just movers. I wish video world and projectors would start to kind of move that way a little bit, because it would be nice not to have these giant Hummer-sized projection enclosures all over the place. But with even from the smallest idea of like an outdoor rated ellipsoidal LED, that is sometimes that's all you need, right? It's like, I need 2 or 3 things. I need some patterns, and it's really simple, and we're walking away. And having those options now has truly been game changing. We did a gig last year in California Adventure called Villain's Grove. That was a villain themed walkthrough for the attendees of our Halloween party, and we would not have been able to do that particular thing 5 or 6 years ago, following all the electrical codes, making sure that everything was safe. And now we did the entire thing, 600-700 fixtures, all outdoor rated, everything. And it's not just the fixtures, right? It's connectors, it's adapters, it's the ruggedization of everything that really makes those type of outdoor installations possible.
Yeah, I want to chime in there real quick. Like from the product development side, these products started, in the themed environment, cruise ships, like really harsh environments to be able to put products there. But now we're actually seeing as this technology has matured, they've gotten cheaper. Now we see actually specifications for these products as indoor attractions and like long-term installs, like cruise ship lounges, where like you want a fixture that's reliable for 10 years. It's sealed optics, it's dust protected. So there's actually a lot more that really helps here with having these IP products. Where it started as it can take water and rain and the bad storm in Florida. And now we really see that these products have a lot of advantages also, and also a lot of the environments that you work in. You have themed queue areas that are going to run every day. They're always dusty, and it's nasty when you really look at the products after they hang there for 2 years. So they're having sealed enclosures and products that are less maintenance or almost no maintenance is a big advantage. We see this more and more, even going into like the concert business now. So these products that we originally designed for this like more themed environments have really started to mature down now, and you see them more and more used actually in daily use. It's really quite interesting.
And I'm hoping the next revolution it's starting is, we're getting so many calls for submersible fixtures. So and some people do it badly, some people do it well, but to really find a lot of good products that are completely submersible is, other than going directly to a fountain manufacturer. And, so I'm both seeing it, but also praying and hoping there's even more of that.
Great. Norm, any additional pieces on how this expanded IP65 offering across the industry is really giving you additional abilities?
I mean, great stuff from Ryan and Casey. I think they hit on a lot of it. But I mean, I think what when they first came out, we were starting to, go, okay, it's an outdoor fixture, but what do we sacrifice? Does it move slower? Does it do, what doesn't it do? And now that's started to really change to the point where, as you say, there's, they're almost indistinguishable. I think, we can go to the, what do we wish there was factor. And I know we all wish there was a big searchlight, LED outdoor searchlight. That's probably our biggest.
I would like to second that.
Yes, yeah.
Heard it.
Yeah, without strapping like 10 of 10, narrow beam fixtures together, or also, fixtures that do everything. I think, Matthias hit on the idea of, I mean, one of my friends, we were outfitting a video wall, and Matt Ward, who told me that, yeah, you should use an outdoor video wall indoors because it won't fail. It doesn't have fans. You don't want it to have fans, for the most part. And just, they say understanding that technology and how that works. I don't know. I don't know what else to add right now.
So what's missing is submersible fixtures, more submersible fixtures, and
I think
large scale searchlights.
Oh yeah,
amongst others, yes. But those are at the top of my list. I know.
Ryan, how about you? What's missing right now?
Definitely the large aperture searchlight. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that reinvented for a current day technology usage, because I think that huge aperture light, I think, is attractive not only to a themed designer, but I think that it's really missing on even concerts and events where. But at the same time, they don't want to sacrifice one quarter of their truck for a single fixture. So, I'd really like to see something reimagined in a large aperture. Power-wise, I mean, it would be nice to do something LED-based, but something definitely that kind of reinvents that market. I think that the market has plenty of pencil beams, and I love pencil beams. I think a lot of people do. That, and I think that I'm also missing. I think I'm also missing an LED hybrid that fits the 400 to 470 watt kind of market. We've got a lot of lamp-based ones, but we don't have a lot of LED ones. And again, for a lot of my clients, even some freelance installations, LED is what they actually wanted. In Alabama, we had to put some Proteus hybrids in, and they made it through the hurricane. So that was good. Hurricane Sally made it through. But those are the only lamp fixtures. A lot of Razor 760s, and those are great. Those are LED. But they wanted LED. We wanted LED. For the sustainment and continued. So something definitely in an LED hybrid, I think, is where I dream of.
Casey, how about you?
I would love to go on record as the third for an IP65 RGBAW LED Synchrolight equivalent. I think that would be an amazing thing. But I also realize, again, it's a niche of a niche. I would love to think that the concert rental market would love that. But Ryan brought up a great point. It's all of a sudden you're taking up truck space. And so I get that. I'm sure, Super Bowl, Olympics, all of the sort of big events. Ooh, that would be good, Norm. Would jump on to something like that. But I think that is definitely the one thing that is missing. I hadn't even really thought about submersible until Norm brought it up. But we have a number of applications where it would be great to have reliable submersible fixtures. Wash fixtures, submersible strobes, that sort of thing would be tremendous for some of the projects that I have. And I'm in firm agreement with Ryan on the smaller, mid-size, 400 watt-ish equivalent. as an LED. I've not found anything yet that I love.
Okay, Matthias, I hope you take diligent note.
Yeah.
Lots of notes.
I would add one thing to that too, is I still want fixtures, I mean, with the technology and feedback that have optical chips that could balance their own color, temperature, and intensity. So, I mean, that's got to be not that far away.
Yeah.
It's, it's like you should just be able to talk to the console and say, you guys figure it all out, 3200, go.
I totally second that, Norm.
Balance yourself.
Matthias, any thoughts there?
I took lots of notes.
You're not talking too much.
Lots and lots of notes. I'm thinking. What are you thinking about?
Uh-oh.
All right, we're a little over time, but let's finish off with, obviously, as we touched on, this pandemic has really impacted the themed environment space. The West Coast here is still not open in any theme space. And around the world has been impacted significantly. So how do you guys see the themed environment space changing as we come out of this pandemic? Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Oh, that's kind of a loaded question. I think that it determines based off of the comfort level of our guests and where they will be experiencing productions in the future, based off of not only the availability but also their own comfort level. I think that larger scale outdoor themed environments may do very well in this area. And give themselves the ability, people have the ability to kind of space out a little bit. Something that I think is going to be very popular, especially for this holiday season. A lot of people, visit Christmas light installations, all over the country. I think almost every major city has something. Here, I know here in Orlando, there is the Give Kids the World Village. Here in Orlando has a new Christmas display. And I started thinking about that a lot more because a lot of people that have already had the chance to visit it have said that they've been able to see this, massive, and by the way, a little shout out to many of my colleagues who actually got to work on, actually design and work on that. But, a lot of the people that have seen it were amazed by such a large scale, wide area themed environment, and they were excited that they could experience it at their own pace and avoid other people and socially distance, and they were still able to have that experience, but in a safe way. So things like that, I think that in the immediate future, and I think everybody agrees it's an unsure immediate future, those things I think will create a good comfort level.
Great. Casey, how about you? How do you see it changing as we come out of this?
Oh, I have way more questions than I have answers, unfortunately. So these are, I wonder, we like to create environments that are tactile, that you can touch things. How does that change over the course of the next several years as people become more sensitive to that? I got to tell you, from the technology and show side, I genuinely don't know. My hope is that from the production side, that we can take sort of a lesson away from this little bit of a slowdown in work, and that we could see maybe better timelines or more humane working schedules. I hope this teaches us that working endlessly until we're exhausted and depleted is not necessary to create world-class entertainment. And as far as what people see out in the world, I think it becomes more about immersion and seeing, but not necessarily experiencing in a tactile way. And that's unfortunate. It forces you to look at different ways to trigger things, whether that's, through pads or brake beams or whatever. I think it's going to be really challenging to navigate and figure out what people want, because I don't think people know what they want yet.
For sure. Norm, we'll finish off with this. I mean, it could be those sensors you talked about, right?
No, I think that, I mean, we're all kind of, everyone's working with XR and drive-throughs and all this, but I think, to me, one of the things I've been thinking about is that maybe as we come out of it, people will be able to travel, but not everybody. So I would really love to explore how to attend an event live, but attend it with your friend who can't make it, and both of you be able to at least share it and have relatively the same experience. And I think that could be a really big, interesting way to combine a lot of these things that we're all working on, but separately right now. So I'll be really curious to see how that works out.
Great. Matthias, anything to add before we close out today?
Well, I would agree that the sort of large-scale outdoor spectaculars, these nighttime things, are probably one of the first things we're going to see back, because they're just safe in a way to do for the audience, and they may feel most comfortable being in a large space or something. So I think you're going to see something like that. Be probably one of the first things. You may even see dedicated tours that are just designed to engage people in a cool environment, just to, people can get back together in a way that they feel comfortable with. I think that these kind of like themed things we're going to see first, for sure. I would agree with that.
Great. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And Norm, Casey, Ryan, really appreciate you guys taking the time and sharing your knowledge and insight.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. And I know we ran a little over, so we appreciate that. Keep looking forward to Elation Hours in the future. We'll be doing one a quarter. Matthias will be doing an Elation Innovation Hour, also once a quarter. And our European counterparts are doing the coffee break, which is really product focused. So make sure you guys are tuning into those as well. For Elation, the team here, let's support everybody as we get through this pandemic. And we look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you.